you are watching another episode of Over the Back Fence, the neighborhood Falmouth production of neighbors talking to one another. So today we have Jackie Pratt, Marion Bahari, Mary Pat McKenzie, and me, I'm Susan Laux. And our discussion today is about your first car. So everybody seems to have a first car story. So
I can.
Okay, Marion, lead us off.
Well, in 1965, I bought my first car, which was a blue Beetle, a Volkswagen Beetle with a stick shift. And I had that car for, I think, almost 14 years.
Wow.
And I loved it. It was, and my parents didn't, I should say that my parents didn't drive. So we went everywhere with public transportation. We lived in Chicago. And when I got my first car, I started taking my parents everywhere. My mother was working, I'd go pick her up. And I never had a feeling about a car like I did my first one. And I even named it, but I honestly can't remember the name of it. But it was, the Volkswagen Beetles were little. There was a lot of snow in Chicago. And if we had a big snowstorm, I was able to actually get out and push it and move it when it was snowing. So I had it for a long time. And I remember I went everywhere with that car. And it was just, I still have great memories of it. Unfortunately, when I sold it to someone who had a head-on collision with it, not long after I sold it to him, and it became garbage. They had to, it was total and they had to take it away. But I have very fond memories about my first car. So that was that one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Blue
You ever have to change the tire on it? We had Volkswagen Bugs when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That was the thing we learned to change tires on.
I don't remember that. I do remember when I first started driving it, I had learned on a stick shift because my parents didn't drive. I learned on a stick shift on the column. And then when I got this car, the stick shift was on the floor and I wasn't quite sure how to do it. I had to take it to somebody who then showed me how to do it. But I don't remember the tires, but it was a great little car. Had no heat, if you remember that. When I would go back and forth anywhere, I had to put a blanket on because Volkswagens at that time really didn't have a good heating system.
No, they were very idiosyncratic.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, how about either of you two?
My first car was a hand-me-down. It was an Austin American, and it was in the mid-70s. And
I don't even know what that is.
it's an Austin. It was an Austin Healey sedan, and I liked it because the front of it looked like a smile, a face with a smile. Now which shows you where my head was at. So I was just out of the 60s, guys. I wanted a car that was smiling. So at any rate, but it was a hand-me-down, and it had after factory air conditioning, and I was living in Baton Rouge at the time, and of course the air conditioning kept blowing up. So at any rate, I continued to live in Louisiana, and the first car I bought was it was an Audi Fox, which was a small, sporty, yeah, and that was a high performance. I love that car. It was English racing green. It had what they called luggage brown.
Yeah.
Leather on the inside. It had a lot of pep, and I discovered driving across the causeway from Metairie to New Orleans that you could get it up to 120 miles an hour.
Wow.
Happy.
Yeah, I was young,
Yes.
but I managed to stop conversation at a dinner party that I was hurrying to get home to, by my ex-husband, and there's probably a good reason for that. Said something about it's so silly because the speedometer goes up to 120, and who'd ever go that fast? And I said, well, I did. His point was that you never know whether or not it would go 120. I said, it does. I did that. But at any rate, luckily there weren't ticketing at that point on the causeway. But and keep in mind that it was two 4-lane bridges, and there was no traffic on it. So I mean, it wasn't like I was in traffic, or still wasn't. You have to be young and crazy. But
So you weren't passing people on the bridge?
the thing is, I passed people early on, way before I got up that fast. Then there wasn't anybody, and it's a straight shot. You can see it's flat. You can see there was no one there. So I thought, what the heck?
So yeah, I mean, you practically had to, right?
It was kind of like a consumer checking thing.
What?
You know, it was like you were the consumer checking the
Right.
Right,
truth
right.
of advertising, or
That's
the truth of the speedometer, actually.
I needed you at the dinner table. Yes.
Right.
Oh, I love it. How about you, Mary Pat?
Well, I came late to driving. Because we lived in a city, and I had absolutely no interest in driving because my mother had a rule that you had to pay for your own insurance. So I was married and had my oldest kid before I learned to drive.
Hmm.
I learned to drive with him in the baby basket in the back seat.
Was that scary to learn to drive at an older age? Did you feel a little more apprehensive or not?
Not even a little bit. I learned to drive on a standard, and I had a friend, Elaine Smithies. We were living in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. And Elaine said to me, well, I'll teach you to drive, but I don't know how to drive a standard. I said, don't worry, I'll figure that part out. You just sit in the other seat. So I learned to drive in Donald's Capri because he was in Toronto working. So he didn't know that I was taking the car out with the baby in it. And I learned to drive on the Capri. He had a thing for Capri. So we had Capris for several, like probably 3 of them. The first car I bought was when, honestly, Andrew was in high school and had bought a car on his own before I bought a car, which is kind of pathetic. I mean, when we moved to Falmouth and I worked at the bookstore, we lived on Katie Hatch Road, I could walk to work. It was like, seriously, we had a car to go to the grocery store and all that, but I didn't care. So, and my first car that I bought was a Subaru, and I am now on my 4th Subaru.
Oh, no. Wow.
The only difference was that one, the first one I had a sunroof, which I loved because I could wave to people and I could make bad motions with my hand to people on the road that were making, left
I'm
hand.
not sure that's why they put the sunroof in.
Yeah, right.
Probably not. And I did tone it down when I had children in the car. I felt that because they would tell their mothers if I,
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So
You're in a
anyway,
tight
but I love that first red Subaru with the sunroof. I didn't get another one with the sunroof because I learned that as my children were driving, they didn't always remember to close it when it rained. That was a disadvantage, when you go out and the car's flooded because, oh, Mom, I forgot.
Right.
Classic
Pat,
teenage-
I forgot what a Capri looks like.
Yeah, I don't know either.
They're little sports cars. I mean, they have a bit of a back seat, really not much of a back seat. They're 2 bucket seats. It's a Ford. I don't think they make them anymore.
Oh, I'm sure they don't.
No.
I don't.
And truthfully, this is only my second car that is not a standard. I mean, I just always drove a standard. And what's weird now is this car, the new Subarus have that automatic shut off at stop signs and red lights and that sort of thing. And it is the strangest sensation because I always feel like I've stalled the car. It's,
Right.
I don't like that feature because when you, as you know, Marion, or we've all driven standards. If you drive a standard
Right.
a long time and it cuts out at a stop sign, you think you've stalled. It's weird.
Right.
Okay, I just found a picture of a Capri, so I'm gonna share screen.
Okay.
Is that
Oh,
what your car
really?
looked like?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
Ford
my.
Yeah.
Capri, that's kind of racy.
Yeah. It is. Ours was brown, and then we had a black one. But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
I
Wow,
don't remember ever seeing one like
There's
that.
not a lot of room for kids in the back seat.
doesn't look like it.
No.
Okay,
Like my Volkswagen, there was no room in the back seat for anything either.
Yeah.
So Susan, what did you have?
well, you will all be very jealous when you hear that I had shared with my older brother a Ford Pinto, and it was it was white and lime green trim.
Was
And
that one of the ones that was,
avocado trim. And actually, now that I say avocado, it was like driving an avocado. It kind of looked like an avocado. But you know what? I mean, I don't even remember how old I was. Probably 17 or 16. And my older brother had been driving too. And so this, sort of gave us both wheels. But yeah, it was a small car, and it was, but it was a car, so great, and it was definitely not a standard. I didn't learn to drive a standard for a while, for a couple of years after that. But yeah, and it was teeny, and yeah, but that's about it. That was not, what was the car that blew up a lot if you hit it?
Oh,
With,
was that Corvair?
mute.
yes, it was the Corvair, I think.
Corvair?
Was it the Corvair?
Yes,
But
I think if you hit
Pinto
in the
didn't
back.
have a good record either.
Yeah, I think there
I
was
think,
something dicey about the Pinto.
yeah, I think they were recalled, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of reminds me of this. This was before these were made, but the Gremlins. You remember Gremlins?
Oh,
Yeah.
we
They
had,
were so
Yeah.
wide and kind of strange. I did never really liked Gremlins.
well, we had one of those, and we also, it was awful, and he bought it, it was orange. I wasn't with him. And he also had a Corvair before we got married. So he had two horrible cars. But I remember they said that the Pinto had been recalled. So.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
I remember
No,
weird
no,
stuff
no,
about
no,
that
no,
car.
no, 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 no.
Mainly because my aunt had one.
Had a-
She had a Pinto, she had a Mustang, mom's youngest unmarried sister who always had weird cars.
And when I was in college, I had it was not a Mustang, but it was a Camaro. And, it was super racy, and I am not a super racy person. Actually, I am kind of a fast driver, but I am not, the personality of somebody would drive a Camaro, and it actually had those spoilers or something that came out of it. Was secondhand, so it was, we found it on, it was on the lot. It was like, yeah, this is cool. And so yeah. And I did name that, and that car was named Baxter. And that was not all, only a handful of my friends had cars. And so this, became sort of the group car. And it, yeah, took a lot of us around. So.
One of the things that I remember about my car, I had it so long that my son was born, and at that time, you didn't put the car seat in the back; it was in the front seat, in the front.
Mm.
And I lived in New York, and I went over the George Washington Bridge with my son, and we went into New Jersey, and I went to buy Pampers. and I had 2 boxes of Pampers and I could not get them in the car. The back seat of the Volkswagen was so small that I couldn't get the 2, and they were big, boxes of Pampers. So I took one of the boxes, I had to, take the Pampers out and throw them in the car. So that's one of the things that I remember about my car.
But didn't they have a decent trunk? Like, because the trunk was,
In the front.
In the front.
yeah,
Right,
and
But,
that's where the spare tire was, that I know.
right. But for some reason, I didn't think about that.
That's where Mike was.
Right. So anyway, the kid was in the front and I needed to put the Pampers in the car. And I ripped open the box, put the Pampers in the car and went on my way. But anyway, and not long after that is when we sold it.
The trunk opened that way, right? It wasn't like you went and did that. It
No, no,
the
yeah, it opens like-
windshield up, right?
Flip away from you. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that anymore.
Well, I
didn't
think
see
that's
tires very
maybe
often.
that might have been how the engine was, but I think you had to get into, didn't you have to get into the trunk a way you would
Yeah.
expect
The
to?
engine was in the back,
The engine was in the back.
but I don't remember opening it that way. But who knows? That was a long
Maybe
time
wrong.
ago.
I thought it opened like a little door. Am I misremembering? It was
I-
like a little door under the,
No,
No. I think it did open the regular way.
Yeah. I
Um,
think things
But I
change.
really don't remember. That was like
it
1970.
was a while ago.
A few
was a while
years
ago.
ago.
Well, I think on that note, we will bring this conversation to a close, and we thank everyone for participating, for all 4 of us for participating in this discussion. And anyone watching who wants to suggest a topic or want to weigh in on your experience of your first car, we'd love to hear from you. This is a production of Neighborhood Falmouth. It's called Over the Back Fence, a conversation between neighbors, and we hope we'll see you again. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
uh,